Well, good morning, good day, folks, and welcome back to The Secret Solve. This is a program where we look at the book at The Secret and try to figure out if there is any way to solve these puzzles. Today, I'm trying to link this particular image. Now, I, for one, believe that there are images in the back of the book that relate to the puzzles in the front of the book, and that if you can find elements in both, you might be able to better find your solve idea that makes sense. If you tuned in yesterday, I talked a little bit about a solve idea that would be in Golden Gate Park, since that seems to be the consensus as to where this one is. Well, let's first off look at the image on page 65. So this image on page 65 has a basket, if you will, and in this basket you have a number of different people, which I don't know if we can identify them or not, but it's kind of sitting on a pedestal base. It's called the West Ghost, so we know it has to do something with one of the stories about the West Coast. The only puzzle that the consensus of the community wants to put in the West Coast is one in San Francisco. So, following that logic, then you should probably use this particular image and this particular story to potentially link to a West Ghost. And I'm going to just point out by saying that look at the round crystal ball image in the hot tub or in the bath, the Bohemian Society, if you will. Just look at the Bohemian Society here hanging around this round ball. But is it a round ball or is it a pearl set into a necklace piece or a ring? Okay, now that I've got you interested, let's start looking a little bit closer at that round image in the middle of on page 65 in the hot tub that they're all sitting around. Maybe we've mistaken that and that's actually a pearl. Well, if that is in case the pearl, let's go back to the image that is linked to San Francisco. Well, you want to say that that's the pearl. Okay, good. Now let's go back to this runner-up drawing, as I call it. So now we've got maybe the pearl here, and we've got the Bohemian Club, and we've got this figure rising out of it holding a wine glass. Are we happy with that? Are we happy with that being a wine glass that the guy in this image figure is holding? We then have a couple of palm trees indicating that we might be in the right place. But look closely at the vines at the bottom. Look closely at this vine detail surrounding this basket. So, and then look at the detail of the two image figures clasping, or one clasping the other's hand here in a squeezing motion, if you will. So out of the vat, if you will, comes wine. Okay. All right. Well, the reason I mention this is because there's a feature in the park, and this feature is over here by the two lions that I mentioned yesterday, and it's I'm going to butcher the name. It's called the La Poème de la Vigne, the La Poème de la Vigne by Gustave Doré. It's the vintage vase. It was completed in like 1883. So the inscription on this bronze statue that's in Golden Gate Park says Gustave Doré created this vase for French winemakers who exhibited at the 1878 Paris World's Fair, decorating the colossal wine vessel are Cupid, satires, bacchantes associated with Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. The foundry shipped the version of the vase to San Francisco from the 1894 California Midwinter International Exposition, after which M.H. DeYoung purchased and then donated the vase to the DeYoung Museum. Well, he at first actually saw this at the Chicago Fair. And so its entry to where it sits today has a little bit more information than what is initially put on this placard. So I want you to look closely at some of the details of this, because there are two serpents on this fountain or on this vase. So it's the Poem of the Vine is the name of this. I think this story has something to do with vine. There's a vine dangling below the table from the rose or whatever it is. The in the image itself, the Perard or the Palancar drawing. What if all those round appearances behind the serpent is actually grapes? And what if there is a serpent that actually is on the vintage vase or La Poema de la let's just call it the Poem of the Vine. What if there's a serpent on there that has a hatched pattern scarred into it back in the 1882 uh, 83 period? What if there is actually that appearance? So if that is the case, and this guy is emanating out of a vat holding a glass of wine, um, you know, we've got this whole area on the one side of the park that not only has, the statue that has to do with Cervantes. Well, the interesting thing about this is that um, if you start reading a little about the guy that actually put this together, let's get to him. Where is he at? So the guy's name is Gustave Doré. Paul Gustave Louis Christophe Doré. I know I butchered that. It's all good. So he was born in January and died in January. Oh, that's an oddity. Okay, so he was a printmaker, illustrator, painter, comic artist, caricaturist, and sculptor. And I just know that Byron kind of worked in his own personal proclivities into these puzzles. And he was into these, comics, uh, visual learning. Uh, he did the whole entire comic thing for. Anyway, I'm just saying, I think that that's important for this. He is best known for his prolific output of wood engravings that illustrated classic literature, especially those for the Vulgate Bible and Dante's Divine Comedy. Okay, so here we have a wood engraver, and in the image, a lot of people think that that background looks a lot like wood. And I'm somewhat in agreement with that. What if that is what the whole entire background is supposed to represent? And if you can find this guy that did this bronze uh, statue in the park, I think you get closer to the maybe answer. At the height of his career, some 40 block cutters were employed to cut his drawings into the wood painting blocks, uh, and some of them actually also signed the image. He created over 10,000 illustrations, the most important of which were copied using an electrotype process using cylinder presses. Anything that has pressing to do, because there's that press that's fairly close to where this monument is in the park as well. I'm not going to go through his whole entire portfolio, but Doré subsequently went on to win commissions to depict scenes from books by Cervantes. And we all know that that is the windmill chasing guy who wrote Don Quixote. Balzac, Milton, and Dante. He also illustrated Gargantua, and I'm just going to leave it at that because we've got the corporate giants. We've got other giant things. In 1856, he produced 12 folio-sized illustrations of the legend of the Wandering Jew. I always find anything that works into that. In the 1860s, he illustrated a French edition of Don Quixote. Okay, so he primarily is a French guy. But anyway, there's the information about the guy that actually made this statue. Another guy that I didn't talk about yesterday is Julius Kahn, and he's related to the Pershing statue on the other side. But this guy did a lot to promote the was the guy that was very well related to the person that got that one put into the park. And mainly, he's a U.S. House of Representative from California's 4th District. And he was instrumental in getting that statue put up for Pershing. So there's not much there, but I did just want to mention that. Um, Another person that had to do a lot with the um, statue of Pershing is the guy by the name of Haig Patigian. Haigpatigian. And he did a bust of tennis star Helen Willis Moody, and it's inside the DeYoung Museum. But outside of the museum, he has many notorious statues. Um, he's an Armenian immigrant who escaped genocide as a child and lost three of his siblings and his son's illness. He went from earning $11 a week at a San Francisco newspaper to earning $15,000 per commission to sculpt a president. And then he married into a wealthy California family, and he did that in a 7-year period. But anytime you get these people that are freedom riders from uh, anywhere, they're always good because that's what the first paragraph of the book is dedicated to. Um, so he also created the owl. The owl is a 40-foot shrine made of concrete and steel. It's the centerpiece for the highly secretive and exclusive Bohemian Club. Cremation of Care effigy burning in Mont Rio Forest every year. It's the kind of event we can only confirm with uh, traffic advisories. So there's this thing called the burning of the owl that occurs at the Bohemian Grove. And again, the Bohemian aspect of this is mentioned 3 or 4 times in the back of the book. And so, I think the Bohemian Club probably has something to do with this, the whole Bohemian Society, etc. And so, since this guy is well entrenched with that, I give him some, um, I guess, give him some interest there. Uh, so, Patagon also made a bronze plaque outside the Bohemian Club's building in Nob Hill. And again, I've got to solve for Nob Hill, but I don't know. The bronzed Abraham Lincoln statue has been sitting pensively outside City Hall since 1926, but I find him at the World War I General John J. Pershing statue in Golden Gate that he finished in 1922. He also did a volunteer fireman that was a gift from Lily Hitchcock Coit. Uh, that's in Washington Square Park. But anyway, he's another person that's very interesting. The 1941 stone monument park near the water on Marine Green and dedicated to William C. Ralston, a Bank of California founder. So William C. Ralston's interesting because I actually believe that there's a solve in St. Louis that has to do with the Ralston Purina Company and the checkerboard square and the checkered background. And I also believe there's links between the image puzzles that can assist you in knowing that you're on the right track to solving a puzzle. And so anytime I find a Ralston, Bank of California. But anyway, a symbolic figure on the monument faces San Francisco Bay, where Ralston mysteriously drowned just as he had lost his massive fortune. So I don't know. I mean, you put that one out there. Uh, Along the Filbert Steps, anyone can stop at the Rose Garden at 300 Filbert Street to admire the studio model of Patagon's quote creation nude sculpture that was displayed at the Golden Gate International Expedition on Treasure Island. Interestingly enough, It was placed here by property owners Virginia and Elias Anderlini, occasionally dressed up with clothes by pearl-clutching neighbors, and it survived being stolen as part of a prank before the 1955 Cal USC football game. So from the Filbert steps, you can see the studio model of quote unquote creation. Uh, Four busts inside City Hall, including one of former General Frederick Funston, is there as well. So I mentioned this guy because he's got an interesting history. He's got a tie to San Francisco monuments, and he's actually commissioned the one in the park. Uh, While Padigan hadn't studied sculpture, he had read books on human anatomy. His lifelike presentation of male and female bodies earned him the claim as the unquiet soul in many works to come. But anyway, just remember, many of these works he put together are woodcuts. And don't know if that. Oh, no, I'm on the wrong guy. My bad. Sorry. Sorry, I moved from one guy to the other. There's a Hague Patagon owl plaque outside the Bohemian Club I mentioned earlier, and it has this owl on it, and it says, "Weaving spiders come not here, 1872 to 1909." And it's a owl sitting on a branch. Okay, well, you can read about that. Uh, he also lived on Russian Hill, so that's always good. But anyway, there you can read that because I put that link in the article if you want to read more about him. So I'm gonna go back to the park a little bit with my browser guy, and you guys probably are having a hard time getting over the 982 in the verse that I used for this because I use the Fortress North, cold as glass, friendship south, take your task to the number 982 because all these streets have been changed that go through the park. And the reason, their entryway here between 8th and 9th Street. So you've got a 10th Avenue entryway and you have a 8th entryway. But they actually have 9th Avenue platted into the blue playground. And maybe the reason that the image background starts out as blue is because you're supposed to start just, let's say, at 982 9th Street, where you would be addressed correctly. Now, when the street name was not John F. Kennedy Promenade, and when the other street was not named Hagawara Tea Garden, and we didn't have Nancy Pelosi, and we didn't have Music Concourse, I want to know what these streets were named in 1980. And it's quite possible that you could take your task to the 982 and be exactly on the ground, like on Hagawara Tea Garden Drive. You could be right on that street, or you could be right at the Lindy in the park off of John F. Kennedy Promenade, because this was not the names of these streets back then. And let's just say if you were correctly addressed there, you could easily, have the blue playground and then the Lindy in the park. And the reason that, because that's basically, I think, just referring you back to Lindy, which is Charles Lindbergh. So there was a dance called the Lindy Hop. And the Lindy Hop was a famous dance that people did following the famous flight that Lindbergh made across the ocean, the first such nonstop flight of a certain time. And so I think if you look at that, you quite possibly can be there. But I like the small of scale or small split in the center of four alike, step across, because the Padre Junipero Sierra Monument has a step. The No Lion That Fears is there's the Pair of Sphinxes by Arthur Putnam that's always been in the park in this general area. There's also a lion statue right there in that general area in the small tea garden. You got to ignore the Parada sculpture, the Peter Coffin, because that thing didn't show up until later. The other thing that's noteworthy is that if you go over to this other part of the park where the World War One memorial is, those names have been on that World War One memorial for a long time, and that's going to be behind the Sphinxes over in that general area. Um, I believe Andy Goldworth's drawn stone. I think that one actually showed up after a long time after uh, 1980, so you can't really use that one. But if you go over here to the pair of the Sphinxes, I mentioned this yesterday. Um, you're at the Japanese tea garden basically, and you can see the tea thing in the background, right? It's pretty obvious it's there. But if you go over here, you have this um, monument in the park where these people are squeezing. This guy is squeezing, you know, wine, and it's pouring into the little cup holder. So you've got two wine or vine themed elements right here in the park, literally within whistling distance of each other. And how you could work on the small cross, because the cross is right over here at this other base. But what I like is if you go back to the square base that you have for the page 65 uh, item, and you've got that square base, if you truly can use the back of the book as a referencing point as to what you need to be looking for, you have this nice square base that this wine squeezer is sitting on. And if you're looking at the wine squeezer, if you will, right behind him is the three-winged and slight, the Star Spangled Banner, and our strongest tower of delight. Delight. The last line in whose broad stripes and broad stars. So something gleamed. Uh, anyway, if you read the lyrics of the Star Spangled Banner, you're going to get the light. So I don't know. I kind of like that. The Pershing guy, I mean, the December night could reflect to Pershing. Um, I'm wondering if this one street used to be called Fall Street, possibly. Um, if you look at the bottom of the, um, if you look at the bottom of the Cervantes statue, it's also got this square base. There's definitely a spout. Um, if you look at the wine squeezer, and the wine squeezer is definitely portrayed in the image on page 65, where you basically have the guy holding a glass of wine at the top coming out of the barrel at the bottom, and the pearl sitting right in the middle of the wine thing. So I think, and you got to remember, this wine sculpture's been in this park forever, but maybe not at this very location in 1982. So, in summary, I'm pretty committed to this area because if you look at the Sphinx, you can walk from the Sphinx over to the fire hydrant. I don't know. Okay, here's another detail in the park. There's actually a water fountain. There's a water drinking fountain right here, and I don't know how long that water drinking fountain, and that fire hydrant has been there, but that could be another. So if you go directly from that Sphinx over here, right next to the Sphinx is the wine uh, bottle. Anyway, the poem of the vine. So right behind the Sphinx is the poem of the vine statue. Directly across and that sits actually between the two uh, sphinxes. Again, we've had an instance of a centaur before, but in between those two, and then if you actually back out a little bit from that, you can get a view of a lamppost. And uh, I don't know if that lamppost is the design it's been, but if you look at that lamppost, it almost looks like that ball that they're gazing at in the image on page 65. And so you've got this lamppost. Um, Also, if you look at the actual image itself, the table, if you look at that shape of the lamppost and you look at the shape of the table that the rose is sitting on, there's some familiar characteristics between that lamppost and the table that is sitting on. Again, much of this could have been changed since the 1980s. They renamed, streets Nancy Pelosi, and long before she was rigging ballot machines, you know, the street was probably not named Nancy Pelosi. And so I can't. There's also another jug, if you will, that's been filled up by this guy, and maybe that's your leg eater. I mean, maybe that's the leg, and that leg's in the position of the leg eater, and although it's not connected to the way the other one is, and I can't really get a good vibe on what the guy standing behind there is doing. Um, but going back to this fountain or this poem of the vine, if you look at the detail on the bottom of it, as you look up from the bottom of it, there's some serpents on it that almost look like the serpent that is on the uh, breast of the image figure. And if you like to use Janis Joplin, and that's who you think this is, it's Pearl, it's Janis Joplin, I'm good with that. I just think that it's an Asian appearing figure. That puts you in the tea garden. There's a teapot over here with a handle on it in the back. And so, if you want to put me right there, I'm happy being right there by the Sphinx, and then I'm happy turning around and not having to go very far to get. And by the way, you see the two. You see, there's an appearance of these two on page 65. There's an appearance of two palm trees in the image, right? So if you go to the De Young Museum, um, and you look around, what do you see? Well, you see that kind of palm. And, that museum wasn't there in 1980 in that format. It was different back then. But anyway, you've got the appearance of some trees, and these trees look exactly like the ones on page 65. So I guess what I'm saying is if you can use uh, the West Ghost from the back of the book and pair it with the image in the front of the book, you could get to a location here in the park where you have these really old. There's two really old trees here, and also if you look at the leaves of the other trees in this image, not the big ones at the top, but the ones at the center, they are fairly similar in type to the type of leaves that are on the trees over here as you would go over that bridge back towards the Cervantes. And stylistically, that railing of the over the bridge is very similar to what you would have in the then one part of the book. So turning that back around, then you would have uh, the Star Spangled Banner one in the middle. I'm getting a different view of my guy what is he? Is he carrying a scabbard on one side? And I finally found another side of my guy that's turning the press. Um, I don't know if is he carrying a dagger maybe? Looks like he might be uh, carrying a dagger. If you like to use a different verse for this, you could that could be the tie that binds. You know, and you could be looking if this is the correct location using a different verse. Um, that was a little bit different view. I haven't found a view where I can get over and look at that guy and see what the other youngster is looks like because there's another person in that image. So I don't know what's really behind that guy. Uh, his leg is, and I don't know if the back of the book's going to have a picture of somebody whose legs are in that particular position, pulling in that. If I could, but if you do look at the guy in the pool, um, his back, the back of the guy that's facing the ball in the pool, his back does kind of look a little similar to how that might look. Well, let's see if anybody's joined in for today's show. Well, looks like I've got a pretty light crew tonight today. But anyway, I like using that image in the back of the book as the backup image for um, the West Coast, California image. And looking at the sleeves of the guy coming out of the grape stopping thing, and I see a few details that might look similar. Okay, well, that's going to conclude the presentation today. Hope everybody's having a good day. Look forward to you joining me on the next Secret Solve.